What do you do when the moment you thought was harmless, just a stranger's hands at the club, turns into the very evidence that destroys your life? How could I have known my husband would stop smiling, stop arguing, and simply start collecting proof? Why did no one warn me that humiliation doesn't always come from shouting, but sometimes from a silence so cold it turns your secrets into exhibits? The bass thumped through my chest as I swayed on the crowded dance floor, the neon lights casting purple and pink shadows across my face. I could feel Marcus watching me from our table, his beer barely touched, that familiar disapproving look creasing his forehead. God, he was such a buzzkill. "Come on, Lysandra," Karina shouted over the music, her blonde hair whipping around as she danced. "Live a little. You're 33, not 93. I laughed, throwing my head back and letting the music wash over me. This was exactly what I needed after another week of Marcus's silent treatments and his mother's passive-aggressive comments about my priorities. A night out at Pulse, downtown's hottest club, surrounded by people who actually knew how to have fun. That's when I felt the hands. Strong, confident hands settling on my waist from behind. I turned my head slightly and saw him. Tall, dark hair, stubble, the kind of dangerous smile that Marcus had never possessed. The stranger's name was Leo. I'd learned from Karina's introductions earlier, though I'd saved his number under Lena M in my phone, just in case. "You move like you know what you're doing," Leo whispered in my ear, his breath warm against my neck. I glanced over at Marcus. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white around his beer bottle. Perfect. Maybe this would finally get a reaction out of my emotionally constipated husband. "My husband thinks dancing is a waste of time," I said loudly enough for Leo to hear, pressing back slightly against his chest. "He prefers spreadsheets to actual fun." Leo's hands tightened on my waist, and I could feel his chest rumble with laughter. His loss is my gain. The song changed to something slower, more sensual. I let Leo pull me closer, our bodies moving in sync, his hands never leaving my waist. I kept my eyes locked on Marcus, daring him to do something, to show some emotion, to prove he actually cared about me. But Marcus just sat there, his face unreadable, that slight smile he always wore completely gone. "Lysandra," Karina appeared beside me, her expression suddenly uncertain. "Maybe we should—" "Should what?" I snapped, not breaking eye contact with my husband. "Should I sit at that table like a good little wife while he ignores me all night? I don't think so." Leo's hands moved slightly lower, resting on my hips now. The move was bold, possessive, and I let it happen. Marcus needed to see what he was missing, what he was losing with his cold shoulder routine. "You sure about this?" Leo murmured, his lips brushing my ear. "Absolutely," I said, loud enough to carry over the music. That's when Marcus stood up. For a moment, I thought I'd finally gotten through to him, that he'd march over here and fight for me like men did in movies. Instead, he simply placed a 20 on the table, grabbed his jacket, and walked toward the exit without a backward glance. "Marcus," I called after him, but he didn't stop. "Let him go," Leo said, spinning me around to face him. Clearly he doesn't appreciate what he has. But something cold had settled in my stomach. Marcus never just left. He was the type to wait patiently by the door, checking his watch every 5 minutes, until I was ready to go home. He was boring, predictable, safe. He wasn't supposed to just walk away. "I should probably go after him," I said, though I made no move to leave Leo's arms. "Why? He's the one who left you here." Karina appeared at my elbow again. "Lysandra, seriously, maybe we should call it a night. Marcus looked really upset." "Marcus looks upset when the grocery store runs out of his favorite cereal," I said, rolling my eyes. "He'll get over it." But even as I said the words, I couldn't shake the image of his face as he'd stood up. Not angry, not hurt, just blank, empty, like he'd made some kind of decision. Leo and I danced for another hour, his hands roaming more freely as the night wore on. I gave him my number, let him buy me drinks, laughed at his jokes about DJs and music production. When he suggested we grab coffee sometime, I said yes without hesitation. "Your husband's an idiot," he said as we exchanged phones to input our contact information. "Tell me something I don't know," I replied, typing Lena M. into my contacts. No point in being careless. The Uber ride home was silent. Karina kept glancing at me nervously, but I stared out the window, my head buzzing with alcohol and the lingering thrill of rebellion. Marcus needed to learn that he couldn't just ignore me and expect me to sit quietly in the corner. Our apartment was dark when I stumbled through the front door at 2 a.m. Marcus was already in bed, his back turned to my side, his breathing deep and even. Or at least, he was pretending to sleep. I made a show of getting ready for bed loudly, dropping my heels, running water in the bathroom, humming the song Leo and I had danced to. But Marcus didn't stir. "I know you're awake," I said as I slipped under the covers. "Nothing." "We need to talk about tonight." Still nothing. "Marcus, you can't just—" "I'll handle it," he said quietly, his voice completely devoid of emotion. The word sent a chill down my spine. Not "we'll handle it" or "let's talk tomorrow." Just "I'll handle it." Like I was a problem to be solved. I lay there in the dark, listening to his breathing, waiting for him to say something else. But he didn't, and for the first time all night, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. "Hi, this is Jake from Pulse Security. Someone reported a lost bag from tonight and we're reviewing camera footage. Can you confirm you were on the main dance floor between 11:17 and 11:24 p.m. I stared at the message, my heart suddenly racing. Who would be asking about that specific time? That was exactly when Leo's hands had been on my waist, when I'd been staring at Marcus, when... "Everything okay?" Marcus asked softly. I quickly deleted the message. "Just spam," I lied. But as I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The next morning, Marcus was already gone when I woke up. His coffee mug sat in the sink, rinsed clean, and there was a note on the kitchen counter. "Took Ellie to school. Working late tonight. Dinner's in the fridge. No good morning. No how are you feeling? Just logistics." I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. If he wanted to play the cold shoulder game, fine. Two could play at that. At work, I couldn't concentrate. The marketing firm where I worked as an administrative assistant was buzzing with the usual Monday morning energy, but I kept checking my phone, waiting for a text from Leo, or Marcus, or anyone who might acknowledge that something significant had happened last night. "You look like hell," said Janet from accounting, sliding up to my desk with her morning coffee. "Rough weekend?" "Just went out dancing," I said, trying to sound casual. "My husband's not much of a dancer, so I had to find other partners." Janet raised an eyebrow. "Other partners?" "Nothing serious," I said quickly. "Just some guy at the club. Marcus got all weird about it and left early." "He left you there?" "I had friends with me," I said defensively. "It's not like I was alone." But Janet was already walking away, shaking her head. Great. Now the office gossips would have something to chew on. My phone rang around 10, unknown number. "Hello? Ms. Veer, this is Tony from Pulse. We spoke via text last night about the lost bag situation." My stomach dropped. "Oh, right, the bag." "Yeah, so we pulled the footage from Saturday night, and we have you on camera during that time frame. The thing is, we also had a request from someone else about that same footage. Said there was a bag mix-up and he needed to verify what happened for insurance purposes." "Insurance purposes?" "Yeah, a Marcus Veer. Said he was your husband." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "My husband called you?" "Called and came in this morning, actually. Seemed like a nice guy. Very thorough. He had all the right information, your name, the time you were there, even knew about the guy you were dancing with. Leo something?" I couldn't breathe. "What did you tell him?" "Well, he's your husband, right? And he had legitimate reasons. We gave him a copy of the relevant footage. Hope that helps with your insurance thing." The line went dead. Marcus had the footage. Marcus had video of Leo's hands on my waist, of me pressing back against him, of the way I'd stared at my husband while another man touched me. I tried calling Marcus, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried texting, "We need to talk." No response. By lunch, I was frantic. I called Karina. "I think Marcus got security footage from the club," I said without preamble. "What? How?" He told them it was for insurance. "Karina, what am I going to do?" There was a long pause. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you let that guy feel you up in front of your husband." "Whose side are you on?" "I'm on the side of not destroying your marriage for some random club guy," Karina snapped. "Seriously, Lysandra, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking that my husband treats me like furniture, and maybe he needed a wake-up call." "Well, congratulations. He's definitely awake now." That afternoon, I couldn't focus on anything. Every email felt impossible, every phone call like torture. I kept imagining Marcus watching that footage, seeing me with Leo, analyzing every moment with his accountant's precision. At 3 p.m., my mother called. "Lysandra, honey, I just got off the phone with Judith." Marcus's mother. "Of course." "What did she want?" "She's concerned about you and Marcus. She said he seemed very upset yesterday, and when she asked if everything was okay, he just said he was gathering information." "What does that mean?" "I don't know, Mum. Marcus is being dramatic." "Dramatic? Honey, that man doesn't have a dramatic bone in his body. If he's upset enough to worry his mother, something serious is happening." I closed my eyes. "We had a small disagreement at the club on Saturday. It's nothing." "A disagreement about what?" "Just dancing. He doesn't like when I dance with other people." "Other people? Lysandra Marie, please tell me you didn't—" "I didn't do anything wrong," I snapped. "I danced with someone, that's it. Marcus is being controlling and old-fashioned." But even as I said it, I could hear how weak it sounded. "Honey," my mother said gently, "maybe you should talk to him. Really talk, not fight, not defend, just listen." After work, I drove home slowly, rehearsing what I'd say to Marcus. I'd explain that it was innocent, that Leo meant nothing, that I was just trying to have fun. Marcus would understand. He had to. But when I got home, Marcus was in his office with the door closed. I could hear him typing, the steady rhythm of keys clicking. I knocked. "Come in." He didn't look up from his laptop when I entered. His desk, usually cluttered with work papers, was organized with military precision. There were folders, labeled and stacked, a yellow legal pad covered in his neat handwriting, and there, next to his coffee mug, was a flash drive. "What are you working on?" I asked. "Just organizing some files," he said, still not looking at me. I moved closer, trying to read the folder labels. Evidence, Club Incident was written on the top folder in Marcus's careful script. "Marcus, we need to talk about Saturday night." "Do we?" "Yes, you can't just ignore me and collect whatever this is." Finally, he looked up. His eyes were calm, almost eerily so. "I'm not ignoring you, Lysandra. I'm documenting." "Documenting what?" "Everything." He clicked a few keys, and I caught a glimpse of his screen. It looked like a spreadsheet, with dates and times and phone numbers. "Are those my phone records?" "They're our phone records, joint account, remember?" He closed the laptop. "I'm curious about this Lena M. person you've been texting with, especially the messages from Saturday night at 2:47 a.m. My blood turned to ice. "You went through my phone?" "I didn't have to. Like I said, joint account. All the call and text logs are available online." He stood up, gathering his folders. "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. I think we both need some space." "Marcus, wait." But he was already walking past me, his folders tucked under his arm like evidence files. I stood alone in his office, staring at the empty desk, and for the first time since Saturday night, I realized I might be in serious trouble. The silence stretched for 3 days. Marcus left early for work, came home late, and spoke to me only when necessary. He was polite, civil even, but there was something terrifying about his calmness. It was like living with a stranger who happened to look like my husband. Thursday evening was Ellie's 8th birthday dinner at Romano's, our usual family restaurant. My parents drove in from the suburbs, and Marcus's parents came down from their apartment uptown. I'd been dreading it all week. "There's my birthday girl," my mother exclaimed, sweeping Ellie into a hug as we settled into our booth. 8 years old. Can you believe it, Lysandra?" "It goes by so fast," I said, forcing a smile. Marcus sat across from me, studying the menu like he'd never seen it before, though we'd been coming here for years. "Uncle Marcus looks sad," Ellie whispered to me, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's just tired from work, sweetheart," I said quickly. Marcus's father, Tom, cleared his throat. "How is work going, son?" "Fine," Marcus replied without looking up. "Busy season." "Always is this time of year," Tom said, but his eyes were concerned. He kept glancing between Marcus and me, clearly sensing the tension. My mother, never one to let awkward silences stand, launched into a story about her book club, but I could feel Judith's eyes on me. Marcus's mother had always been politely disapproving of me, but tonight there was something sharper in her gaze. "So, Lysandra," Judith said when my mother paused for breath, "how was your weekend? I heard you went out." The question was casual, but I caught the edge in her voice. Marcus must have told her something. "Just a girls' night," I said lightly. "Karina and I went dancing." "Dancing," Judith repeated like the word tasted sour. "Yes, dancing. You know, that thing people do for fun." "Lysandra," my father warned quietly. But I was tired of tiptoeing around everyone's judgment. "What? I'm not allowed to go out with friends now?" "Of course you are," my mother said quickly. "Judith, I'm sure she did exactly what she wanted to do," Judith interrupted, her voice ice cold. "The question is whether she thought about the consequences." "What consequences?" I snapped. "For dancing?" Marcus finally looked up from his menu. "Should we order appetizers?" he asked mildly, as if we weren't in the middle of a tense exchange. "I think the calamari," Tom said gratefully, clearly eager to change the subject, but I wasn't done. The wine I'd ordered was making me bold, and I was sick of being treated like I'd committed some terrible crime. "You know what?" I said, my voice louder than it should have been in the family restaurant. "I'm 33 years old. I work full-time. I take care of our daughter. I manage our household. If I want to go out and dance with my friends, I'll do it. And if my husband has a problem with that, maybe he should try being more fun himself instead of sulking like a child." The table went completely silent. Even Ellie stopped coloring and looked up at me with wide eyes. Marcus set down his menu very carefully. "Excuse me," he said politely, and walked toward the restroom. "Lysandra Marie," my mother hissed, "what is wrong with you?" "Nothing's wrong with me," I said, but my voice was shaking now. "Everyone's acting like I murdered someone when all I did was dance." "With another man," Judith said quietly. "While your husband watched." "How do you—" I started, then stopped. Of course Marcus had told her. Tom cleared his throat. "Maybe we should focus on Ellie's birthday." "Yes," my father agreed. "This isn't the time or place." But Judith wasn't finished. "That man has loved you since the day he met you," she said, her voice low but fierce. "He works 60 hours a week to provide for you and Ellie. He's never so much as looked at another woman. And this is how you repay him?" "You don't know what you're talking about," I said, but the words felt hollow. "I know my son," Judith replied, "and I know when he's been hurt." Marcus returned to the table, his face composed. "Sorry about that," he said. "Should we order?" The rest of the dinner passed in stilted conversation about Ellie's school and my parents' retirement plans. Marcus was polite to everyone, including me, but that terrible blankness never left his eyes. When Ellie opened her presents, he smiled and took pictures, but it was like watching someone perform the role of a happy father. As we were leaving, Tom pulled Marcus aside. "Son, if you need to talk—" "I'm fine, Dad," Marcus said. Really? But he wasn't fine. None of us were fine. In the car on the way home, Ellie fell asleep in her car seat, exhausted from the excitement. Marcus drove in silence, his hand steady on the wheel. "I'm sorry," I said finally. "About what I said at dinner." "Are you?" "Yes. I was upset, and I took it out on everyone." "You were upset," he repeated. "About what?" "About this. Us. The way you've been treating me since Saturday." Marcus pulled into our parking spot and turned off the engine. "How have I been treating you, Lysandra?" "Like I'm some kind of criminal, like I've done something unforgivable." He was quiet for a long moment, staring straight ahead. "Have you?" "Have I what?" "Done something unforgivable." I wanted to say no, to insist that dancing with Leo had been harmless, meaningless, but something in Marcus's voice stopped me. "I don't know," I whispered. He nodded, like that was the answer he'd expected. "I'll carry Ellie up." That night, after Ellie was tucked into bed, I found Marcus in his office again. The door was open this time, and I could see him clearly. He had his laptop open, and there were more folders on his desk than before. A thick manila envelope sat next to his keyboard. "What's in the envelope?" I asked from the doorway. "Legal consultation," he said without looking up. "I wanted to understand my options." "Your options for what?" Finally, he turned to face me. His expression was calm, almost gentle, but his eyes were completely empty. "For when my wife decides she's done pretending our marriage matters to her." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Marcus, I never said—" "You didn't have to say it, Lysandra. You showed me. In front of a room full of strangers, you showed me exactly what you think of our marriage." "It was just dancing." "Was it?" He clicked something on his laptop, and suddenly I was looking at myself on the screen. The club security footage, crystal clear, showing Leo's hands on my waist, showing me pressing back against him, showing the way I'd stared at Marcus with defiance and contempt. "Oh, God," I whispered. "The timestamp shows this went on for 7 minutes," Marcus said clinically. 7 minutes of you letting another man touch you while you made sure I was watching. 7 minutes of you humiliating me in public." "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." He closed the laptop. "You meant every second of it. The question now is what we do about it." I stood there, shaking, as my husband gathered his folders and walked past me toward the guest room. "Marcus, please." "Good night, Lysandra." The door closed with a soft click, and I was alone with the terrible realization that I had destroyed something I couldn't fix. Friday morning brought panic. I'd barely slept, and when I did, I dreamed of security cameras and legal documents and Marcus's empty eyes. I had to fix this before it went any further. The first thing I did was call Leo. "Hey, gorgeous," he answered on the second ring. "I was hoping I'd hear from you." "We need to talk," I said, stepping into an empty conference room at work. "In person." "Sounds serious. Everything okay?" "My husband, he's making a big deal about Saturday night. If anyone asks, we were just dancing, right? Nothing inappropriate happened." There was a pause. "Inappropriate? Babe, we barely touched." "I know, but he's being crazy about it. He even got security footage from the club." "Security footage?" Leo's voice changed, became more alert. "What kind of footage?" "Just the dance floor stuff. But if anyone asks, we need to have the same story. We met that night. We danced a few songs. It was completely innocent." "Lysandra, are you in some kind of trouble?" "No," I said quickly. "It's just, my husband is very conservative. He doesn't understand that married people can have friends of the opposite sex." "Friends," Leo repeated. "Right. Okay, yeah, we're friends. Just friends who met at the club." "Exactly. And we've never texted or called outside of that night." "But we have texted. And called. I've got your number saved right here under—" "Delete it," I said urgently. "Delete everything. My husband might try to contact you." "Jesus, Lysandra, what kind of mess are you in?" "Just delete the messages, okay? Please. After I hung up, I spent 20 minutes in my phone, deleting every text and call log with Leo. Then I realized Marcus had said he could see our phone records online through our joint account. Panic set in again. I called our cell phone company. Hi, I need to know about deleting call and text records from my account. I'm sorry, ma'am, but once records are generated, they can't be deleted. They're maintained for billing and legal purposes. Legal purposes? Yes, ma'am. In case of subpoenas or court orders. Court orders. The words made my stomach lurch. At lunch, I met Karina at our usual cafe. She looked uncomfortable the moment I sat down. I need you to back me up, I said without preamble. If Marcus asks about Saturday night, you need to tell him it was innocent, that Leo was just a random guy we met, and nothing happened. Karina stirred her salad without looking at me. Lysandra, I can't lie to your husband. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to tell him it wasn't a big deal. Wasn't it? What? A big deal. She finally looked up at me. Because from where I was standing, it looked like you were trying to make Marcus jealous, and it worked. I was just having fun. You were flirting with another man in front of your husband, Karina interrupted, and now you want me to pretend it didn't happen? I want you to be my friend. I am your friend. That's why I'm telling you to stop digging this hole deeper and just apologize to Marcus. I tried apologizing, he won't listen, Karina sighed. Maybe because you're not really sorry. You're just sorry you got caught. Her words stung because they were true. I wasn't sorry about dancing with Leo. I was sorry about the consequences. That afternoon my phone rang. Unknown number again. Lysandra, this is Detective Mills with the Metro Police. My heart stopped. Police? Nothing serious, ma'am. We had a report of harassment, and your name came up as a potential witness. Do you know a Leo Mraz? Leo Mraz. Not Leo M., his full name. We met briefly at a club last weekend. Right. Well, Mr. Mraz contacted us because he's been receiving calls from someone claiming to be conducting an investigation into his activities. The caller identified himself as a private investigator working for a Marcus Veer. That's my husband. Well, Mr. Mraz is concerned about harassment. He says your husband has contacted his employer, his landlord, and several of his friends asking questions about his relationship with you. I couldn't breathe. His employer? Yes, ma'am. Apparently, your husband has been quite thorough. Mr. Mraz just wants to make sure this doesn't escalate. He's willing to provide a statement about the nature of your interaction if it would help resolve the situation. What kind of statement? Just the facts. When you met, what happened, whether there was any ongoing relationship, standard stuff. After the detective hung up, I sat in my car in the parking lot, shaking. Marcus wasn't just collecting evidence. He was building a case. A real case, with witnesses and statements and documentation. I tried calling him again, straight to voicemail. I drove home early, hoping to catch him before he left for whatever mysterious appointment kept him out so late. But the apartment was empty except for Ellie, who was at her after-school program until 6. I went straight to Marcus's office. The door was locked. He'd never locked his office door before. Ever. Using a hairpin, I managed to get it open. The room was different, more organized, more clinical. There were filing cabinets I'd never seen before, and his desk looked like a command center. I found the folders. Evidence. Club incident was just the first one. There were others, phone records, witness statements, financial documentation, timeline of events. My hands shook as I opened the phone records folder. Every call and text between Leo and me was highlighted in yellow. The times, the duration, even the cell towers we'd been connected to. It was like a map of our brief relationship. The witness statements folder contained a typed document signed by the club's bouncer. I observed Mrs. Veer dancing with an unknown male subject for approximately 7 minutes. She appeared to be making eye contact with her husband during the interaction and seemed to be enjoying his discomfort. When Mr. Vere left the establishment, Mrs. Vere did not follow him. There was another statement from someone named Jake Morrison, the security guard who'd called me about the footage, and at the bottom of the pile, a business card. Davidson and Associates, Private Investigation Services. Marcus had hired a private investigator. My phone buzzed. Text from Leo. Your husband's PI just left my apartment. We need to talk now. I grabbed my purse and ran. I met Leo at a coffee shop downtown, far from our neighborhood. He looked terrible, pale, unshaven, constantly checking over his shoulder. Your husband is insane, he said before I'd even sat down. Do you know what his investigator asked me? What? Everything. How many times we've talked, whether we've been intimate, whether I knew you were married when we met. He had photos, Lysandra, photos of us from the club, from different angles. What did you tell him? The truth, that we danced, that we've texted a few times, that nothing physical happened beyond that night. But he kept pushing, asking about our relationship like we've been having some torrid affair. We're not having an affair. I know that, you know that. But your husband apparently thinks we are, and now he's got some kind of dossier on both of us. Leo pulled out his phone and showed me a business card. The investigator left this, said I might need a lawyer. A lawyer for what? I don't know. That's what's so crazy about this. We haven't done anything illegal. We danced at a club. We exchanged numbers. We sent a few flirty texts. Since when is that a crime? But even as he said it, I could see the fear in his eyes. Marcus's methodical approach was working. He was making Leo panic, making him doubt himself, making him want to distance himself from me. I think maybe we shouldn't contact each other anymore, Leo said quietly. What? This is getting too intense. Your husband clearly has resources, and I can't afford to get dragged into some messy divorce. We're not getting divorced, aren't you? Leo looked at me sadly. Because from where I'm sitting, it sure looks like that's where this is heading. After Leo left, I sat in the coffee shop for an hour, trying to figure out my next move. I needed allies. I needed people who would support me, who would tell Marcus he was overreacting. I started with social media. A carefully crafted post about how marriage requires trust and communication, not surveillance and suspicion. Within an hour, I had dozens of likes and supportive comments from friends and acquaintances. But then Karina commented, maybe it's time for an honest conversation instead of a public one. And Janet from work, there are always two sides to every story. The support I'd expected wasn't materializing. Instead, people seemed uncomfortable, like they knew more than they were saying. That evening, Marcus came home with a briefcase I'd never seen before. He nodded politely when he saw me, kissed Ellie on the forehead, and went straight to his office. Daddy seems sad, Ellie said as I helped her with homework. He's just stressed about work. Is it because of the man at the restaurant? What man at the restaurant? The man who gave Daddy the envelope. When we were leaving Romano's, a man in a suit gave Daddy an envelope, and they talked for a minute. A process server. Marcus had been served legal papers at our daughter's birthday dinner, and I hadn't even noticed. That night, I waited until Marcus went to bed, then snuck into his office again. The new briefcase was locked, but I found what I was looking for in his desk drawer, a copy of the papers he'd been served. It wasn't divorce papers. It was worse. It was a temporary restraining order application against me. The petition, filed by someone named L. Meraz, requested protection from harassment and stalking. It claimed I had been repeatedly contacting the petitioner despite clear requests to cease communication, and that my husband was conducting an investigation that has caused the petitioner to fear for his safety and employment. Attached to the petition were copies of every text I'd sent Leo, including the ones I'd thought I'd deleted, screenshots of my social media posts, and a statement from Leo describing our interaction at the club as unwelcome advances from a married woman who appeared intoxicated. Unwelcome advances. He was claiming I had harassed him. At the bottom of the file was a court date, Monday morning, 9 a.m., 3 days away. I took pictures of everything with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. Then I carefully put everything back where I'd found it. Marcus knew I'd been in his office before. He'd left this where I would find it on purpose. He wanted me to know what was coming. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a text from Karina or my mother or anyone who might help me figure out how to handle this. But my phone stayed silent. At 3 a.m., I gave up and went to the kitchen for water. Marcus was sitting at the dining room table in the dark, still dressed, staring out the window. "Couldn't sleep either?" I asked. "No." I sat down across from him. "Marcus, we need to talk about tomorrow." "Do we?" "You know I found the papers. I assumed you would. Is this really what you want? A public court battle over a dance at a club?" Marcus turned to look at me, and in the dim light from the street lamps, his face looked older, sadder. "You still don't get it, do you?" "Get what?" "This isn't about the dance, Lysandra. It's about what the dance represented. It's about the texts afterward. It's about the lies and the manipulation and the complete lack of respect for our marriage. I made a mistake." "You made a choice," he corrected quietly, "and now I'm making mine." Monday morning came too quickly. I dressed carefully, professionally, hoping to make a good impression on the judge. But when I arrived at the courthouse, I realized Marcus had thought of everything. The hearing was in a small courtroom, but it wasn't empty. Karina was there, looking uncomfortable. My mother sat in the back row, her face pale, and scattered throughout the room were people I recognized: neighbors, co-workers, parents from Ellie's school. Marcus had made sure our business would be public. Leo's lawyer presented their case efficiently. Harassment, stalking, unwanted contact. They had documentation, witnesses, a timeline of events that made me look like a predator. My court-appointed lawyer did her best, but we had no preparation, no counter-evidence, no strategy. When the judge asked if I had anything to say in my defense, I stood up on shaking legs. "Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding. I met Mr. Mraz at a club. We danced, we exchanged numbers. I never stalked or harassed anyone." "What about these text messages?" the judge asked, holding up printed copies. 23 messages sent over a 5-day period, including several after Mr. Mraz asked you to stop contacting him. I looked at the messages. They were real, flirty, persistent, increasingly desperate as Leo had pulled away. But seeing them printed out, read aloud in court, they sounded so much worse than they had felt when I'd sent them. "I was just trying to be friendly." "And this social media post?" The judge held up another paper. "Where you describe your husband as controlling and paranoid and suggest that married people should be free to have meaningful connections with others." I'd forgotten about that post. I'd deleted it within hours, but someone had screenshot it. "Your Honor," Leo's lawyer interjected, "my client simply wants to be left alone. He's concerned that Mrs. Veer's behavior is escalating, and given her husband's apparent investigation into his personal life, he fears the situation could become dangerous." The judge granted the restraining order, temporary but public. My name, my address, my photograph, all entered into the court record as someone who had stalked and harassed another person. As we filed out of the courtroom, I caught sight of Marcus in the hallway. He was talking quietly with a man in an expensive suit, his lawyer, I realized. They both looked calm, prepared, like this had all gone exactly according to plan. "Lysandra," Karina appeared at my elbow. "Are you okay?" "Did you know?" I asked. "Did you know this was happening?" She looked away. "Marcus called me last week, asked if I'd be willing to testify about what I saw at the club." And I told him the truth, that you seemed to be trying to make him jealous, and that it worked. Another ally, gone. As I walked out of the courthouse, I realized that Marcus had done something brilliant and terrible. He'd turned my moment of rebellion into a legal case, complete with evidence and witnesses and public records. He'd made my private humiliation of him into his public vindication, and he'd done it all without raising his voice, without losing his temper, without doing anything that wasn't completely legal and methodical and calm. The man I'd married was still there, but he'd become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could smile politely while systematically destroying my reputation and my sense of reality. Someone who had learned to fight back. The restraining order was just the beginning. Within a week, everything unraveled completely. First, my boss called me into her office. "Lysandra, we need to discuss your recent legal troubles." "It's a personal matter," I said quickly. "It won't affect my work." Unfortunately, it already has. We've received calls from reporters asking about our stalker employee, and frankly, the nature of the charges raises concerns about your judgment. Reporters? Court records are public, Lysandra, and apparently your case has attracted some attention. I found out why when I got home. Marcus was in the living room with Ellie, helping her with homework, acting like nothing had happened. But there was a manila envelope on the kitchen counter with my name on it. Inside were printed copies of news articles. Local woman granted restraining order against married stalker. Club dancing leads to harassment charges. Administrative assistant accused of pursuing DJ despite marriage. They had my photo, my professional headshot from the company website. They had details about the club, about the dancing, about the text messages. Everything was public now, searchable online forever. "How?" I asked Marcus when Ellie went to bed. "Public records," he said simply. "Anyone can access court filings. I just made sure the right people knew where to look." "You called reporters?" "I called a few friends who work in media. Told them there was an interesting case involving social media and modern marriage. They did the rest." I stared at him. "You destroyed my reputation." "You destroyed your reputation," he corrected. "I just documented it." The next morning, I couldn't face going to work. I called in sick and spent the day hiding in the apartment, watching my social media notifications pile up. Friends, family, co-workers, everyone had seen the articles. The comments ranged from supportive to savage, but all of them were public, permanent, attached to my name forever. My mother called, crying. "Honey, what were you thinking? Your father's golf buddies are sending him these articles. The whole family is humiliated." "I didn't do anything wrong." "You have a restraining order against you for stalking. How is that not wrong?" Even she was turning against me. That afternoon, my lawyer called. "Lysandra, we have a problem. Leo Mraz's attorney contacted me. They have additional evidence they want to submit to the court." "What kind of evidence?" "Apparently, Mr. Mraz recorded some of your phone conversations. In this state, only one party needs to consent to recording, so they're admissible." He recorded me. 3 conversations, including one where you allegedly asked him to lie about the nature of your relationship if anyone asked. My stomach dropped. I remembered that conversation, the panicked call where I'd asked him to say we were just friends, to delete our messages, to present a united front against Marcus's investigation. "There's more," the lawyer continued. "Your husband's attorney has filed a motion to include these recordings in your divorce proceedings." "What divorce proceedings?" "The ones that were filed this morning. You should be receiving papers within the hour." Marcus had filed for divorce. Not just separation, not counseling, not a trial period. Divorce, with grounds of adultery and emotional abandonment. The process server arrived at 3 p.m., just as I was picking up Ellie from school. He handed me the papers in front of the other parents, making sure to verify my identity twice before walking away. "Mummy, what was that?" Ellie asked. "Just some paperwork, sweetie." But the other parents were staring. They'd seen the news articles too. I was now the neighborhood scandal, the cautionary tale they'd whisper about at school pickup. That evening, Marcus sat me down at the kitchen table. He had another folder, thicker than the others. "I want to show you something," he said, opening the folder. "This is what I've compiled over the past 2 weeks." The folder was comprehensive. Security footage from the club, timestamped and annotated. Phone records showing every call and text between Leo and me. Screenshots of my social media posts, including ones I'd forgotten about from months ago, where I'd complained about being trapped in suburban marriage and needing excitement. There were witness statements from the club bouncer, the security guard, even other patrons who'd seen our interaction. There were financial records showing that I'd been spending money on new clothes and makeup in the weeks leading up to the club incident. There was a psychological evaluation that Marcus had commissioned, suggesting that my behavior fit patterns of someone seeking extramarital relationships. "You hired a psychologist to analyze me?" "I hired a forensic psychologist to analyze the evidence," Marcus corrected. "The conclusion was that your behavior showed clear intent to pursue a relationship outside our marriage, and that the club incident was likely a culmination of longer-term planning rather than a spontaneous mistake." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" He flipped to another section. "These are your Google searches from the past 6 months. How to meet people when you're married. Is emotional cheating really cheating? Signs your marriage is over. You've been planning this for a while, Lysandra." I stared at the empty picnic table long after Marcus disappeared into the crowd. The city moved on around me. Joggers, dog walkers, kids chasing pigeons, while I sat frozen, the weight of the signed papers pressing against my chest like a stone. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Ellie's school. "Parent-teacher conference reminder, Lysandra Veer, attendance required." I laughed, a dry, hollow sound. Required, as if they'd let me anywhere near the classroom without a chaperone now. I opened my messages and scrolled through the old thread with Leo. One last time, his final text from weeks ago. "I'm sorry, but I can't be part of this." I deleted the entire conversation, then deleted the app. It felt pointless. Everything was already archived, subpoenaed, public. The sun dipped lower, painting the skyline in bruised oranges and purples. I thought about the night at the club, the music loud enough to drown out doubt, Leo's hand on my waist, the thrill of being wanted. I'd told myself it was harmless flirtation, a harmless escape from a marriage that had grown too comfortable, too predictable. But Marcus had seen the truth before I did. I'd been building a bridge out of our life, plank by plank, and I'd never planned to invite him along. I stood up slowly, legs stiff from sitting. My reflection in a nearby cafe window looked like a stranger, pale, sharp-eyed, older. The woman who once believed she could have it all without consequences was gone. In her place stood someone who had learned, too late, that rebellion without responsibility is just another word for self-destruction. I walked toward the subway, papers tucked under my arm, the divorce decree heavy as a sentence. Somewhere ahead, Ellie was waiting for a mother she might not recognize. And somewhere behind, Marcus was already moving forward, free of the shadow I'd cast. The train rattled into the station. I stepped on, alone, and let the doors close behind me. The city blurred past the window, and for the first time in months, I didn't reach for my phone. I just sat there, in the quiet, and began to figure out who I might become next.